Well, good evening, everyone, and it's our April meeting of 2022, Donate Life Month, and we just had our donor dash in Philadelphia on this past Sunday. Beautiful day, great weather, a lot of dashers out there, not as many as I'm used to seeing, right, Carl? But, I decided I'm never, again, donating money to anyone collecting for marathons because they just take the money and run. Okay.
Bad, 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 bad. Leave the jokes to the clowns.
Hey, so we have a special guest with us tonight, a living Ilda. Now, this isn't a fairy godmother, but close to. So an ILDA is an independent living donor advocate. And from the Penn Transplant Institute tonight, we have Vanessa Warsaw with us, who's going to talk about what she does at Penn. She was originally the only one at Penn doing this, advocating for living donors. And I guess it's in such demand, they have another person, but Vanessa is the original ILDA at Penn, and we're certainly glad to have her, and she can tell us a little bit more about that. So start thinking about any questions that you have. If you know of anybody that is in need of a life-saving organ and can have a living donor, right? So that's two organs really prominently that we hear about, unless Vanessa tells us anything different, and that would be the kidney, which we do have some living kidney donors on the meeting tonight, and of course the liver is the second. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Vanessa. Vanessa, welcome.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much, Bill, for the warm welcome. It's an honor to speak with you guys today. I'm just going to share my screen. I put a couple of slides together, and hopefully we can then talk a little bit more about my role, and I can answer any questions that you guys might have. Okay, so again, I'm the ILDA or the ILDA. I do work at Penn. So I'm going to be speaking mostly about my experience at Penn, but I'm sure if you go to other transplant institutes in the Philadelphia area, your experience or the ILDA role, it's highly regulated, so it'd probably be very similar. So just a little summary of what I plan on talking about tonight, and then we'll have some discussion. So what exactly is an ILDA? I work completely independently, but collaboratively with the living donor team. And like Bill said, at Penn, we do kidney, liver, and then uterus. I think we don't have enough time to talk about the uterus stuff, but so we'll mostly focus on the kidney and the liver today. I'm not involved whatsoever in the recipient care. The only information I know about the recipient is anything that a donor might tell me. And I'm here to protect the rights and promote the best interest for the living donor. This operation serves no physical benefit for the living donor. Emotionally, it might serve a huge benefit, but physically, it doesn't serve any benefit. So I'm here to make sure that every living donor understands all the information provided. They have all of their questions answered. They understand the risks fully of this surgery, and that they're doing this for the right reasons and they're not getting paid. So that is essentially what I do. And this is a newer role within Transplant Institute. In 2019, CMS, which is Medicare, made a guideline saying that every living donor has to have an ILDA, and it has to be separate from the donor team. can't be part of the donor team. It can't be a social worker, it can't be a doctor, it can't be an ethicist. It has to be completely separate. And that you have to have certain points of contact with the ILDA outside of the donor evaluation. And I'll go through with that too in the next slide. So again, this is the process, and my main job is to make sure the donor can provide informed consent, that they're aware of their rights as a donor, that they can opt out at any time up until the point of anesthesia. I tell all my donors, fortunately, after anesthesia, you're not reliable. I can't help you. If you tell me if I raise my hand after anesthesia, it means I don't want to do this. I can't help you. Make sure that they understand the risks and make sure that they understand their options. Being a living donor is a great option for recipients, but it doesn't just fall on them. So the points of contact that at Penn that I do provide is the ILDA has to be the first point of contact. So essentially, when you have a donor, they would fill out the donor inquiry form. At Penn, this is an online form. Once that form is filled out, you are spoken to by a team member within, I think, 2 to 3 business days. Then, if you pass all of the basic requirements to become a living donor, they will move you on to talk to me. They cannot do any testing. Any transplant institute cannot do any testing until you have the first conversation with the ILDA to inform you of your rights as a donor. I'm part of the evaluation process. I do sit in on the committee meetings. Within the committee meetings, I can't always change the committee's decision, but I'm there to advocate for any concerns that they might have. For example, maybe someone on the donor team is concerned that this person that's donating doesn't have 2 weeks paid time off. That could be a concern. And I could advocate saying they're aware, they feel like they can make that 2 weeks work, they have savings, and they could be eligible for this grant. I'm here if a donor gets approved to make sure that they understand the surgical consent and that they feel comfortable with the surgeon and they feel like all their questions are answered. I talk to each donor in the hospital, and then I also follow up with donors 8 to 12 months post-op. And in addition to that, I'm available as needed. So some other things that before we get on to our questions that you might have for me, Bill and I were just talking a little bit about a couple of things before the meeting. And one of the things that he did want me to talk about was the protections of the living donor. So if a living donor's kidney or liver fails, after they donate, they get moved to the top of the transplant list. And that is some protection that is offered for each living donor. Mostly living donors are extremely healthy enough to donate an organ. So I've only seen this happen once at my time at Penn, and it was not related whatsoever to donation. It was just an unfortunate situation that happened to this potential donor. But they do get moved to the top of the transplant list. At Penn, we partner with the National Kidney Registry, and the National Kidney Registry is basically like a swap program. So if you are a specific blood type as a recipient and you have a donor that is a great donor, but they're a different blood type, they can work within the National Kidney Registry, which is all over the country. They have centers, and find you a donor with the correct blood match, and your donor can donate to someone with their blood type that's a recipient. So you don't have to be a direct blood match to be a kidney donor. With liver, you do right now, but they're working at Penn on figuring out ways to do swaps. They're also working on ways to swap different organs internally, like maybe you'd be a great kidney candidate, but your loved one or friend needs a liver. Sometimes we have candidates that, you know, can't donate their liver for their loved one, but they could donate a kidney. So we're working on some internal organ swaps. And in the next couple of weeks, they're actually starting to do altruistic liver donations, something that we haven't done for adults. We do them for CHOP recipients, but not for adults. So if anyone has any questions, I feel like I just rambled. I'm happy to answer any questions for you guys.
Vanessa, why don't you stop sharing your screen there so we can go into Hollywood Square mode here?
Yeah. Okay.
And,
I think I did, right?
Yes, you did. And that's an interesting point, everyone, that Vanessa just made. Before, if you wanted to donate a kidney altruistically, meaning not knowing who the recipient of the kidney donation is going to, that was kind of confined to just kidneys. Now, Penn is opening that up to liver. So you can be an altruistic donor for liver.
And so I think a lot of altruistic donors, we have way more altruistic donors than you probably can imagine. I would say about 30 to 40% of our donors are completely altruistic. And then I would say maybe an additional, 10 to 20% of those know the recipient, but they don't know them well. Like they wouldn't have their
I got it. Thank you very much.
So
yeah, okay.
with liver, yes. And the liver regenerates. So a lot of altruistic individuals in their head, they think, okay, I have 2 kidneys, I only need 1. But some people feel like, oh, the liver regenerates. And so why not donate the liver? So I think it's a great option. Fortunately, kidney, even though a lot of people don't want to be on dialysis, is at least an option. It's the only transplant that has that option, But with liver, there is no other option. So it's another great step forward.
So a cool story. I'm at the Donor Dash on Sunday in Philadelphia, and I run into a good friend of mine, Kelly Schmidt, who is an altruistic kidney donor. And I said, hey, we're having Vanessa Warsaw from Penn Transplant Institute in Philly as our guest speaker. Do you know her? She says, do I know her? She was my Ilda.
Yeah.
So, did you get the picture I sent you, Vanessa?
I did. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you.
And on another note, Sue Kelchner is a kidney donor, and she was just talking about possibly having some kidney problems. And Sue, did you have any questions for Vanessa with that? Of course, she had mentioned if you do in fact need a kidney, you rock it right to the top of the list. So.
Yeah. Okay, I haven't seen the kidney doctor yet. To get an appointment to see him was like unbelievable. So I finally got an appointment today, and I'm going to see him in about 2 weeks. And I don't know why, but my creatinine is going up, and it's been really good up until this point. Of course, now this was 30 years ago that I gave Bob my kidney, my husband Bob my kidney. And I've been healthy with it ever since. And why all of a sudden it's acting up, I don't know. So I have to get evaluated by the nephrology. I've already had the blood work done, and I've had the kidney scan done. So they didn't find anything other than the creatinine's going up, and I have some protein in my 24-hour urine that was significant.
Yeah.
So, they didn't have an ILDA when I did it. I had Merle. Do you know Merle Palangian?
Yeah, she's a recipient coordinator now.
Well, she was my ILDA back then. And, because I went through her for everything. She's a sweet person. I love her.
Yeah.
But of course, that was 30 years ago. So a lot of things have changed since then. Then my husband's kidney, my kidney and him lasted 16 years. And then he needed another transplant. And our daughter, who works at Penn, she works in the operating room at Penn, she donated a kidney to Bob. So
that's
we
amazing.
Really have a strong tie to Penn with all our kidney issues. So
yeah. Well, I'm Sue. I'm so sorry that this is happening to you, and if I can do anything, please, Bill has my cell phone. I'm happy to talk to you and we can talk offline, and I'm happy to help you in any way I can.
Okay, well, I'm going to see Dr. Danker. Do you know him?
I'm not familiar with him. Is he at Presby?
No, he's at Perlman.
At Perlman. I only know pretty well 3 nephrologists that work on the donor team, because the recipient team is so separate, honestly. And I know names, but sometimes I don't. And I know faces, like, oh, I've seen you around in 2 West, but.
Right. I just picked anybody. I wanted Dr. Coburn, but he doesn't see patients anymore. And so I just said, give me anybody. I don't care who it is, just give me anybody. So I have an appointment with him. So we'll see what happens.
I'll be
So-
thinking of you and hoping that everything goes well, but please, again, contact me if I can do anything.
Okay.
Bill?
And
Yeah.
I was telling before we got on here, when I gave my donation to Bob, I had to meet with the psychiatrist first to make sure I wasn't being coerced into doing this. And then after I got his okay, then I started the actual testing process. I made the donation. We went home. They said, thank you very much. Goodbye. Come back in 6 weeks for your post-op checkup. And I never came back again after that. So it's much, much different today.
So we have several questions coming up in the chat here, and I also have a couple questions, Vanessa, for you. But Carl asks, can an altruistic kidney or liver donor be a healthy transplant recipient? I know the answer to that, but do you want to?
So say the question again. Can an altruistic donor be a healthy transplant recipient?
Yeah, so Carl received a heart transplant and he wants to donate one of his kidneys now. Can he?
I don't think that it's an absolute rule out, but I am not familiar with like the medications that you're on and other things that you've undergone. They would do a very, very thorough evaluation. It could be an absolute rule out, but I am always of the mindset of apply and they'll tell you.
Yeah. I was pretty much told that I can't really donate blood now and organs would be out of the question, right? Because the immunosuppressant meds that we take really take its toll on our organs, especially the kidneys. So, we don't really want to put any undue taxing on just one kidney if it taxes 2, right? So, Bob Goodman asks, can you talk about the status of financial assistance for living donors?
Yeah, so right now, and there is a social worker on the team that, full disclosure, is way more knowledgeable than I am, but I can just give you like a brief overview. So you can't be paid for living donation. It is probably the #1 rule and a huge part of my job to make sure that donors are not paid. In other countries, that is okay. In the United States, it is frowned upon. It's a federal offense with jail time and a fine, a very large fine. So you can be paid, your recipient or other individuals can pay you lost wages, but no more than your lost wages. There's also 2 grants that donors can apply for, the NELDAC and a grant through the NKR if you do donate to the NKR. Full disclosure, it's not a ton of money. And the LDAC grant is based off of also the recipient's income. So if you qualify as a donor, but your recipient is Elon Musk, you're not going to be approved for the grant.
Okay. And did you get the email I sent earlier on Act 11?
Yes, I did.
So this is something that kind of ties into this. So back on April 27th of last year, Pennsylvania approved Act 11, which basically is known as the Pennsylvania Living Donor Protection Act. And that requires employees subject to FMLA, which is the Family and Medical Leave Act of 1993, to provide employees undergoing donor surgery the same leave they would be entitled to under FMLA for their own serious health condition or that of a family member.
Yeah.
So,
So just to review what FMLA is, it is Family Medical Leave Act. You have to be employed at a company for a year, and generally that company has to be 50 employees or greater. There are some great companies that are out there that are under 50 employees and are not federally obligated to provide donors or any kind of patient FMLA, but they do because it's the right thing to do, they feel like, and it's 12 weeks of protected time. So up to 12 weeks. The 12 weeks is unpaid, but it protects your job so they cannot fire you. They have to have it available for you when you come back.
so Bob asked another question about the trends for living donation over the last few years. Have they rebounded since the pandemic? Where are we at with things?
I think that they've definitely rebounded and increased. Pre-pandemic, this is like 2019. We did over 100 kidney transplants and about 30 additional transplants to CHOP recipients. And we did about 30 liver transplants, and the numbers are definitely trending higher. I think increased awareness, coupled with actually telemedicine, it allows us to see donors sooner in a more flexible manner, and they don't have to come. They come to Penn right now for one really intense day of testing. If you're a kidney donor, liver, you have a couple more days that you need to come. But I think it fits more in with the donor's schedule, as opposed to pre-pandemic, you had to come a Thursday or Friday. It had to be in the morning. You had to come multiple days. Some people really, some days I don't even want to drive into Penn to go on to 76 and park, so it makes it a lot better for the donor. So I think awareness coupled with, COVID changed things, some for the better, some for the worse, but I think from a living donor perspective, there's been a lot of positive changes.
So Vanessa, these numbers that you just quoted, the 100 and the 30, are these altruistic or?
It's a combination. It's just all the in 2019, and I know it's 2022 now, so don't quote me on those numbers, but that's just the total number of volume that we did.
Okay. Do you know the breakdown between living donors and then even drill down further to altruistic donors in those numbers? Or
yeah. So all of those are living donors. So 100 adult to adult, and about 30 adult to CHOP.
Okay.
Ish. And then with the liver, about 30 in 2019. I can't tell you exactly, but just generally, and I think those numbers increased. I've seen a lot more altruistic donors lately. I would say about 20% of 2019 was completely altruistic, and maybe another additional 20% was, I know this person, I saw the post on Facebook, and I just want to help. What I like to call as a directed altruistic donor. They have someone that they want to direct their gift to, but they don't know that individual.
Barry's asking a question. Do living organs work better than deceased donor organs?
Generally, yes, they do. So a living donor organ is, they believe generally it lasts 10 to 20 years, and a deceased donor would be a little bit less than that. So generally, living donations last longer. Of course, there's anomalies, and sometimes they last shorter, but then sometimes they even last longer than those numbers. I've seen potential donors tell me about recipients that they've had a living donor kidney and that is now failing. That's been 20 plus years.
Before I ask any more questions, maybe Vanessa, you could share some interesting stories. I know I have one in the fact that I was advocating for a patient that needed a kidney transplant, and we were looking for a living donor, and family members were coming forward thinking, oh, I'll be a match, only to find out that they themselves had underlying health problems. And by coming forward, it actually saved their life because they were able to detect in the screening process them having kidney issues that needed to be addressed. So what kind of stories do you have that you've come across?
There are so many. I think obviously the parent to child, the child to parent, they're always very touching. A lot of parents say, I've given them life, I want to give them life again. A lot of children say, my parents have given me everything. I want to give back to them. I can never repay them. I think there's some horrific reasons that people need transplants, and they always stick in your mind. One individual that I had that wanted to donate a kidney, unfortunately, her brother had brain cancer growing up, and she saw the outpouring of support. And she was on Facebook one day, and one of her friends from high school that, she didn't really talk to anymore, but the story just kind of spoke to her. And she remembered how all these people reached out to her family in their time of need, and she wanted to give back to this friend's father, and she donated a kidney. There people, I know I try not to watch the news too much anymore, but there are so many good people out there that donate, that their stories are just amazing. Recently, I had a donor that met someone at a pizza parlor waiting for their pizza, and they were just talking. They both happened to speak a foreign language, and they connected over that, and then they were just talking about life, waiting for their pizza. And my donor said, I'll donate a kidney to you, give me the application. And now at Penn, they have the recipients have like a card that you can give out with a QR code to apply to be a living donor for them.
Melissa,
So there's so many, a lot of donors say, I'm 50, I want to do something crazy, and I'm going to donate a kidney or a liver, So there's a lot of really heartwarming stories, and it restores your faith in humanity. It's a really rewarding job, really interesting. What I will say, and if it's okay if I just touch on this one thing.
sure.
So when you're a living donor, the living donor team is so siloed. They don't talk to anyone on the recipient team. So I think it's really frustrating, and I completely understand why it's frustrating for recipients, whether you're a liver recipient or a kidney, because sometimes you just want to know. You're like, what's going on? Tell me what my donor's doing. Like, tell me how many donors I have. And sometimes I think recipients are like, oh, my son applied, my brother applied, we're good. The problem is sometimes they don't contact the living donor team back, and we can't apply pressure. I call multiple times, they send letters out, but we can't apply pressure to any donors. So they have to want to call us and go through the steps. And I think sometimes recipients think, oh, the donor team's not doing their job, when really sometimes people are just not calling us back because maybe they're saying that they want to do it, but maybe they're getting scared and they don't really want to do it. Or maybe life's just crazy right now, and it's just after they watch the educational video, they're terrified. It could be a multitude of reasons. So I would say to anyone that's looking for a living donor, never tell anyone, I have a living donor, don't apply. I would have as many people apply as possible, because they do go down the list. And you never know you have a living donor until you have that organ in your body. They can opt out up until the point of anesthesia. I know it's hard for any recipient family to hear that, but there's protections put in place for the living donor. So I just wanted to touch on that sometimes it's definitely really hard to be a recipient because you just want to know. And
we're going to expand on that. Melissa, I know you've had your hand up. Did you have a question?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say hi, Vanessa. We're colleagues, and
hi.
really nice to meet you virtually.
Yeah.
I love working at Penn, and actually, I had my kidney transplant in 2008. Dr. Najee was my
He's the
surgeon.
best. I love him.
Yeah, so my two brothers were tested, and my brother Jim, wanting to help me, actually ended up helping himself, wanting to be a living donor hero, because he never knew he had high blood pressure until he went to get tested to give me a kidney. And my oldest brother had kidney stones, and for my first kidney transplant, they didn't want to have kind of like a subpar kind of kidney, so they ruled him out. But what I tried to do is put out the word in my Christmas card letter every year, letting people know that I was waiting for a transplant back in 2004, and I was on dialysis and all of that. So it's right. I never knew who was getting tested, and after I had my transplant with a deceased donor, I found out, like, wow, a lot of people did step up to the plate, and so it's very hard for a recipient to kind of be patient and everything. But working at Penn, I've just actually, as of like 3 weeks ago, I'm on the recipient side, working with the NKR, which is the National Kidney Registry, working with all of the recipients on microsites. So they have a template. The NKR does a great job. They have a template that people can tell their story, and so I'm kind of like the referee to make sure that they're not putting on there that, hey, I'll buy one, or I just have to make sure the wording's all legit and everything. But I almost every morning when I do it from 8 to 9, I'm pretty much crying every day, like hearing all these people's stories, and I'm like, I wish I could give, but it's a wonderful thing. And then we approve their microsite, their actual like customized microsite. And so I hopefully will be sending a lot more living donor referrals your way. So and then they get these little business cards, 250 business cards that they can share when they're in the Bed Bath & Beyond getting their, products. And then, what have you, if somebody's interested to hear their story, they can just show them their card with their microsite link. So it's a really great thing.
The microsites are awesome. And, we've already had a huge influx of donors. And it really, the stories are very moving, and I feel like they work.
Vanessa, do you get involved with paired exchange?
So basically, yes and no. I talk about it. Okay. Some donors want to only donate to their loved one, and that's their right to choose. Maybe they only want to donate to their husband. Maybe they only want to donate to their child. Right. But the paired kidney exchange is a great option if they're not a match, or if maybe they're not the best match and a better match can be found. The HLA match, HLA lab kind of makes that determination, but I do talk to donors about, how would you feel if you're not a direct match? If you're not a direct match, do you want to meet your recipient? You might never meet your recipient. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about your loved one potentially not having your organ and it failing? How do you feel about your organ going into your loved one and it failing? Because some people who are matches would prefer not to donate directly because they feel too much pressure that if the organ fails, that's their organ, as opposed to going into the paired kidney exchange where there's extra protections, as well as it's not their direct organ. Their loved one's getting the gift, but they don't have to feel that pressure like, oh my gosh, if my kidney or liver fails.
Yeah. Doug, are you with us? Can you share your story? And Doug is my good friend, Doug Fink, otherwise known as Finky.
Hello. Well, which story you want to hear?
We want to hear the story about your paired exchange and what happened there in so many words or less.
Well, in 2016, I received a kidney, and I have a twin brother. Well, should I start from the beginning, or should I make it a quick one?
Yeah, make it a quick one.
Well, in 2016, I had my kidney transplant. I have an identical twin brother. Now, unfortunately, he has diabetes. I don't. But because he has diabetes, he might need a kidney in the future. Now, if he did donate his kidney to me, I wouldn't even have medication. I mean, that's what identical twins do. I ended up getting a kidney from a friend of mine, which she ended up giving a kidney to Texas, and I got my kidney from Georgia. And right now, I'm doing fabulous. I mean, I've never got on dialysis. When I first found out I needed a kidney transplant, the doctor said, "You're going to need dialysis within 3 months." 2.5 years later, 3 years later, I ended up getting the kidney and never received dialysis. I did get the fistula, and I was all ready for it. I know I do believe in holistic medication. I ended up looking online and getting information on a special tea. Now, I don't know whether this did it, which it slowed down everything, but the tea is called nettle tea, Nettle. And I've been taking it since the beginning of them telling me I needed a kidney transplant.
So,
And
Doug, talk to us a little bit about how your brother wanted to donate, he couldn't, and then how a friend stepped forward on your behalf that wasn't a match, right?
Well, a lot of people wanted to donate their kidney to me.
Right.
And unfortunately, they couldn't because they found something wrong with everybody. Matter of fact, I saved my brother-in-law's life. He wanted to donate his kidney, and they found he had a pancreatic cancer, and they caught it right away. And I saved his life. Okay, and he wouldn't be able to give his kidney out until 3 months after he found himself clear. Basically, when it got to the point of me getting my kidney transplant, like I said, I never went on dialysis, so I was really lucky. And of course, on my anniversary of my kidney transplant, my first anniversary of my kidney transplant, I sent them letters because I wanted to meet or at least talk to the person that donated their kidney to me. And they ended up sending letters to me. And on my birthday, on my kidney anniversary,
which was last week, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Which was, yeah.
6
how about
years.
That? Yeah. 6 years, April 18th.
Tuesday. Yep.
First year. And she texted me and said, "This is Julie. I just want to know how my kidney's doing." I was with a whole bunch of friends at Outback, and I'm always on the phone. And they said, "There he goes on the phone again." And I said, "No, you guys got to look at this." And I passed around the phone and told them to read the text. And there I was texting her, oh my goodness, the whole night. I wanted to see what she looked like on Facebook. Her husband, Don, which is my brother's name, ended up getting a kidney from somewhere else because of her. She ended up having twins. She has twin daughters. Same thing as what I had. Same kind of dogs. I mean, everything was all ironically the same. It was pretty scary.
It truly was a paired exchange.
It surely was. And I did meet her at one of our meetings, and surprised the group, which was about 40 people in the group. And I was the speaker, and I talked about my kidney and introduced my donor and their family, and the person that wanted to donate donated her kidney to somebody else, the paired exchange, and had everybody in there, and it was a very emotional day for all of us.
Well, thanks for sharing that with
Yeah.
us, Doug. We really appreciate it. So,
Yeah.
Vanessa, my question to you is, we have a couple people that are waiting for a kidney. What kind of advice do you have for them in regards to anything else they can do? Melissa mentioned the microsite. Is there anything else that they can do to actively promote their situation, and what other advice can you give?
Yeah, the microsite is great. I would talk to anyone and tell them your situation, and you can't beg them to donate a kidney, but you can say, if you're willing, this is the information to apply. I think putting it on social media is great and asking people to share it. The one problem with that is, as you make your net bigger, the less and less you'll know about who's going to be applying for you and asking questions. Like, for example, if you are donating to, if your husband or your partner or your wife is thinking about donating to you, of course, they're probably going to keep you updated on all the steps they're going through. If someone random that is seeing your post shared from a friend, you might not get those updates. So it's really hard as a recipient to be in the dark, but casting a bigger net. I think I cannot tell you how many people I've talked to that have seen a bumper sticker and called the number. They've said, I've been on, the turnpike, and I was behind this car for over 200 miles. I just kept staring at the bumper sticker and I decided to apply. Of course, there's billboards that work too, but they're a little bit pricier. I think the bumper sticker is a little bit more feasible. But now that they have the microsites, those work great.
Awesome. Carl asked, do you have any idea about recovery times for living donors, right? So if someone's going to donate a kidney or a liver, what can they expect as far as a recovery? And we know that everybody's journey is different, right? So
yeah, I would say generally within 1 year, most donors that I talk to are back, they feel like their normal self again. Some are even running marathons to honor their 1 year anniversary. I generally think that, 3 to 6 months, most donors are feeling pretty good, but 1 year, definitely the majority of donors that I talk to are feeling back to normal. And sometimes donors feel down because, one, they're taking a whole organ out of your body. Your whole body has to re-regulate. You could be feeling down because the surgery didn't go as planned for you, didn't go as planned for your recipient. And there is a whole team at Penn, and I'm sure the other transplant institutes that you might go to that can support any living donor that's having a hard time. Sometimes these things just happen. And I will say too, I think we were talking a little bit about earlier, Penn, if Penn is pretty conservative, they definitely want, they're thinking about the donor and they want the donation to work and they want the donor to be healthy. But if you feel strongly that you're not getting the care that you need, and this goes for any center, you can always get a second opinion in life in general. If you don't agree with it, go to a second place and get another opinion.
Does anybody have a question for Vanessa?
No, I just want to point out, put a couple of links in the chat for people that are looking for living donors. Harvey Meisel has a very strong organization to help with ideas on how to approach and how to get your story out there. So I put his links in there. The Living Kidney Donor Network is the name of his organization. The links are in the chat, or you can just look up lkdn.org.
Well, thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions before we let Vanessa go? Well, Vanessa, I just wanted to share with you that I was doing some reading recently, and I learned that England does not have a kidney bank at all, but they do have a liver pool. So with that, I just want to say, Vanessa, thanks for joining us tonight and giving us a little glimpse into what you do to help people like us in need of life-saving organs from the living donor side. So thank you so much. I look forward to running into you in living color, as we say, hopefully when this pandemic is over and we have that face-to-face contact. Thanks
Yeah.
again for joining us.
Thank you so much for letting me speak. It's been an honor. I wish all of you guys well. And if I can answer any questions, if you think of any, Bill has my contact information. You're welcome to contact me via email or phone. And I hope you guys all have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. So I just want to remind everybody that our May meeting is going to be a skincare primer, again, from dermatology at Penn Medicine. If anybody has any topics or possible speakers for future meetings, please reach out to me and let me know. I had a couple other topics that I wanted to touch on since we have a few more minutes left. And I wanted to start with saying how proud I am that Trio Philadelphia chapter just recently hung a plate down at the family house, at the Gift of Life family house, on the Home Cooked Hero wall. Through membership from our members of the Philadelphia chapter, one of the benefits was we were able to donate money to the Home Cooked Hero program and get recognition by having a plate on the wall. That is something that I was wanting to do for the longest time. So again, for those of you that are members, thank you. Those of you that are on the fence, please consider joining Philadelphia chapter of Trio. We would greatly appreciate it. Some other things that we've been talking about recently are certainly COVID and the uptick with, the holiday 2 weekends ago. If you're watching baseball on TV, you're seeing maybe 1 or 2 people masking up at the game and you're going, oh my gosh, is this the breeding ground? There's certainly been an uptick with COVID and new variants being uncovered. Certainly they happen overseas and then they say it'll take 2 weeks to a week to get to us. I've been monitoring these things and, it's better certainly to be safe than sorry. And then there's crazy things like Philadelphia going right to mask mandating last week. And then 4 days later, lifting that. And now airlines are lifting their mask mandate, which is really causing some uncomfortableness with flying now that you'll be practically the only one wearing a mask, right? Amongst maybe a few. So these are some concerns that I have moving forward. Of course, have my 2 boosters in addition to my original shots, and I'm really after Penn now for the Evishield, although I'm even doing some research and reading that the effectiveness of having Evishield shots is not as effective on some of these new variants. So, again, just monitoring the situation. I personally have made the decision not to go to the Transplant games this year in San Diego. I was holding out for a long period of time to make that decision, and I decided, I'm making it now. Because of all of the things that are going on. It's, a multifaceted reason, I guess. A, the mask mandate being lifted on traveling, the cost of the hotels in San Diego, what happened to us going through the Meadowlands toboggle and the virtual thing and all the monies invested and lost that were in that. And I just didn't want to have to go through that again, because there is a chance that they could cancel these games again. And it's not in our backyard this time. It's clear across the country, right? So did anyone want to share any thoughts or concerns with the games?
Well, as you know, Bill, I just reversed my decision on going to the games. I was committed. made the airline reservations, and then with the unmasking on the plane, I said, you know what? I've been doing just fine staying away from this COVID, getting on a plane for whatever 5 hours or whatever it is to get there and back with everybody unmasked in a closed surface like that. I said, you know what? With that expense, do you want to take that risk? And we just made the decision yesterday to say no. And I'm sad about that. I've gone to 10 of the games, and the last 2 haven't gone till we had our knees and hips replaced, but we're all ready to go. And I'm sad to say I did back out for the same reasons you talked about.
Yeah. Bob, did you have something?
Yeah, I decided as well not to go, and a lot of it had to do with the masking decision or the lack thereof. Now, interestingly enough, and I know you're aware of this. Not only have I had 4 booster shots, I've had COVID and I've had the monoclonal antibody infusion. I'm part of the Johns Hopkins study, and so I have, although I'm due to send in a sample now, I have a pretty good sense that I'm rather well protected, but I don't need to take any risks, any undue risks. I take enough risks. I don't need to take this one. So I'm not going to go either. It's very disappointing, but
I'm going to be very curious to see how many people fall on either side of this fence. They used to get anywhere from 7,000 to 10,000 people out. Just looking at our own close population here in Trio, Philadelphia, I'm going to be very interested to hear how many people actually go. And I hope they're successful, but after the Jersey debacle last year and with all this, I think people are going to be conservative. There's too many unknowns with the pandemic, even at this point, with the variants and with the changing rules that are opening up to more options in terms of not masking, for example. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yep.
Yeah, Bill, I agree with what you said. At this time, I'm still registered. I'm starting to sit on the fence a little bit, though. After a recent trip to Colorado, where maybe 25% of the people on the plane were masked, but there were a lot of people on that plane that were coughing and sneezing. I'm really second guessing myself. So I'm not sure at this point. May depend on what I hear at the next Team Philadelphia meeting, which I think Kelly has in May. I'm kind of sitting on the fence, not sure which way to go right now. I do know that I do not want to get COVID again. It was terrible for me. And I will, I take all the precautions I should, I think, to try to avoid getting it again. But I agree with what you said, Bill.
Yeah, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, right? But it's not so much about getting COVID, it's the after effects. I have so many people that I talk to that say, oh, I wish I would just get it and get it over with. They think it's like the flu. And I'm like, listen, it doesn't work that way. You get COVID, there's going to be residual effects down the road that are being uncovered on a regular basis. And, to see years to come, what the ramifications are, right?
So adding to what you just said, I just saw the study today that's showing that upwards of a year later, we are still, if you've had COVID, you are subject to high risk for various heart issues, blood clots, heart attacks, all those kind of things. And they're saying it is very high in those people, even if you had a mild case, never went to the hospital or anything, and you thought you were doing fine, even those without symptoms. A year later, the studies are showing there's a very high incidence of cardiac issues.
Yeah. And, I liken this to a game of musical chairs, right? And I want to be the guy that is in the last seat, not have my chair pulled out from under me in the beginning of the game. Now, with that being said, I think we're all going to get it at some point, right? But I want to get it way down the line when the effects are not as severe as if you got it initially, a year and a half or so ago, right? So all it takes is for us to put our guard down for a second, right? I know a personal story. My fiance, her son, his wife's parents came up from West Virginia, unknowingly brought COVID with them, gave it to the whole group. Kathy was over there helping. Fortunately, she was outside. So all of a sudden, that went into lockdown. That was my inner circle that was breached. And I said to Kathy, hey, listen, I'm not seeing you for the next 5 days, and then we'll test you and we'll see from there, right? So you can't be too careful, but all it takes is one slip up. You figuring, oh, I'm going to run into the store and pick up something and I'm not wearing my mask, and boom, you got it. It's those times when we think we're the safest and then all of a sudden, we're not. So with that, did anybody have anything that they wanted to contribute before we close out the meeting tonight?
Bill, when's the next meeting date in May?
Yeah, so we're always on the fourth Tuesday at 6:30. So that meeting date will be on Tuesday, May 24th. Tuesday, May 24th is the fourth Tuesday in May. In July and August, we will not have meetings for the summer, but we will have Penn Dermatology with the skin cancer primer, the do's and don'ts. I have your questions ready. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to share or add?
Bill,
Yes.
This is Terry. So you may have wondered or may not have cared, like, who's the interloper on the meeting. I just want to let you know, I work with the National Kidney Donation Organization. So I actually know Kelly Schmidt pretty well.
Oh, okay.
Because she works with us. I am also a certified ILDA. So when I saw you were having an ILDA on, I wanted to hear how other people do things. And like she said, there's not much flexibility, but it was nice to hear the process at Penn. So that's why I'm here. I actually live in Central Illinois. I am a living kidney donor for about four and a half years ago, part of a chain. So yeah, that's why I was here. So you don't have to wonder, like, who was the creepy lady listening in? It was me.
Terry, you're always welcome to join us, and thank you for sharing your story and joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, with that, if there are no other comments, we will close out the meeting, and I wish everybody a safe couple weeks until we reconvene in May.
Bill,
Yes.
Bill, I do have one more question. My internet gave out in the middle, so I missed some of Vanessa's presentation. Do you repost the whole thing somewhere where I can hear her?
Yes, so it will be posted on Trio National's website under resources. We have a video library.
Okay.
I don't know if you can send me a text or anything, but if you send me your email, I can make sure when it does get posted that we send you a link.
Okay, are you on Facebook?
I am on Facebook.
I'll find you there.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Terry.
Bye.
Well, good night, everybody, and thanks again for joining us.